What annoys you about the podcast you've been listening to lately? That the source material is always saying the topics of whatever group or agency he's making a conspiracy about. How Sandy Hook was an attempt by the government to bankrupt him and that he's made peace with the families despite owning them $1 billion. Lastly, how drunk the source material has gotten on every single one of his modern-day podcasts. I listened to Knowledge Fight and Dan and Jordan are amazing. It's just that Alex Jones is such a bore that you can predict what he says before he even says it. Also, he's inviting so many Nazis on his show despite him being pro-Israel. The way podcasters will end guest episodes by abruptly ending the conversation with "So do you have anything to plug?" And then the guest has to go into salesman mode. I come from radio, so maybe it's just an old school method, but I think the host should ask the guest that question before they start recording and the host should do the plugging for the guest. Also, stop making meta comments about podcasting in your podcasts. It's like when people would include bloopers at the end of their student films. Only you and your friends think they're funny. I really enjoy female-led podcasts, but it feels like whenever there's a female guest female host combination, they just keep going back and forth with, guy, I love that. I'm obsessed with you right now. Superficially praising each other's everything to a very annoying extent while lacking actual substance in their conversations, almost to the point it sounds fake. The overuse of the words love and obsessed is tedious and annoying. High energy kissing each other's ass for minutes on end is not fun to listen to. I listen to the podcast Off Menu. It's just a silly light-hearted podcast with guests talking about their dream menus. Recently they did a tour of live shows for the podcast, same format as a podcast, just with a live audience, and almost all of the guests they had on the live shows are guests I would have been really excited to listen to. In the past they've released the live shows as podcast episodes eventually, but it never feels the same. It doesn't help that I didn't love a few of the guests they had on this season. I love Well There's Your Problem, but they do seem to be running short of interesting disasters to cover. The general infrastructure stuff or wider topics are still good, the steam train episodes being a prime example, but not as much fun as Bridge Fall Down or Plane Go Boom episodes. On the other end of the scale, the big disasters they've yet to cover are either massive in scale, making it an enormous undertaking, or have been done to death elsewhere. I've watched Trash Taste since the beginning, but recently I've kinda not liked Joey, didn't find him so annoying before, had no problem with me then, but now I insta-close the video. I like his personal channel videos, just not in Trash Taste SMH. Also, Garn has this thing where he just repeats what the other person says, only slightly changing the sentences. That being said, I always end up listening to them while gaming. No specifics because this has happened more than once with different podcasts. 7.5 minutes of ads. 7.5 minutes. I get people need to eat, and advertising is the deal with the devil we make to ensure our favorite creators don't die of scurvy. But 7.5 minutes of uninterrupted ads? 450 seconds? In one particular case a solid fifth of the runtime? No. Behave. I'm not that invested in this season-long trial, and I'm not sure where they're going with it. Old Gods of Appalachia. Where did Steve Lutz go? The Incomparable Network. Some of my favorites have either ended or pod faded pretty badly, which has made me sad lately. Gaming with Gage and Friends, Games and Feelings, Savage Interludes, GN Word of the Week, Manifest Zone. A bunch of people on Reddit recommended the investigative journalism podcast Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's. I get that it's satirical, and I tried to listen to several episodes, but it just wasn't that funny. Isn't guy supposed to be from another planet, trying to understand human concepts? The whole podcast just came off as boring and annoying. Krista makes a podcast. I wouldn't say annoying, but the guests are inconsistent with my taste in music. Still interesting to listen to, but top tier when the guest and song are something that connects with me personally. To be clear, I wouldn't change it at all because I'm sure there are people out there listening to the shows that fall flat with me. Used to listen to Smartless a lot, really enjoyed it. Cool concept. 3 actors asking smart people about their chosen field profession. I'm learning about it. It's no longer that. It's just them chatting to their celeb friends mostly. And Sean Hayes inevitably asking, do you have any favorite theater stories from when you did theater? Podcasts in general are turning into slightly more intellectual drive time radio. 2-3 people droning on and on with ads here and there, except it's about celebrities, murders or bad movies instead of items from the news or pop science statistics about what people are thinking about when they brush their teeth or whatever. When they don't know how to wrap up. The weekly topic is over, the conversation is done, they've said they're closing out whatever, and then one of the host's devices to quip one more quick home and the other responds in turn. Next thing you know, they're on another 5 minutes of quipping. Just hinted at that point, the fact that they just stopped the promised next season never came. I mean, I can't fault them, I'm listening a year or two after they were created, so I can't really pay to support them, and I know how much work it is to put one together, but it's tough getting involved in the story, then it just stops, the same ads over and over. Also, comedians talking about comedy. I haven't heard a new or interesting thing in years. You're not the last bastion of free speech. You're not some freedom fighter. You all say the same stuff over and over. It's like listening to two cokeheads talk at a party, not to sound like a dad, but the way some people speak. I don't know if it's a Gen Z thing or what, but the vocal fry, and ending every sentence like it's a question really makes it hard to listen to. I really don't want this to be an age thing, and I'm sure you are very qualified, but holy fuck. I love listening to the Sean Ryan show. But in a lot of episodes, certain parts of the episode will play twice. Like the person says something and they say it again. I have noticed this in several episodes. Drives me nuts sometimes. I have noticed this on several episodes they do this. Just a general complaint I have with the podcasts under the iHeartMedia umbrella. I really dislike how with certain podcasts of theirs, the ad will come up abruptly in the middle of someone saying something, with no segue into an ad break, and it's really annoying in my opinion. I listen to a lot of the Nightlight Horror Movie Club and honestly, minimal to no complaints. It's a small podcast but they put a lot of effort into it. Maybe my biggest complaint is I'd like them to cover Bone Tomahawk but don't see it happening anytime soon. After a few weeks, I started to notice the same running gags in almost all of them, usually stuff like oh my god we're 10 minutes in and we're still on the intro, or talking about being jealous of people who are more popular, but in a sarcastic way. Andrew will never eat the pencil. But on a more serious note, until there are beans in the hole. You all just bought Jeff's dirt. And maybe piss. But actually the issue is, solve the legal hurdles preventing Andrew from coming to Austin. Taste buds sometimes takes 30 minutes to get to the battle. They just tremble about comic friends doing weird stuff. In very rare cases they talk for 50 minutes and then say something like we'll just get to the battle next episode. No, it's an interview podcast, where I'm starting to pick up that the host is going through interviewing 101 on how to respond to folks. Typically ending with wow, that's great or huh, fascinating. Killer interviews, awful routine. I've dropped a few podcasts that started out as 1 hour of interesting or funny content, but turned into multi-hour gabfests between co-hosts that like the sound of their own voices and doing ad spots for BetterHelp and HelloFresh. I wouldn't skip past the ads if they were short and one at a time. The fact that I know that ads will play several at a time is exactly why I reach for the skip button. If ad time was a quick 20 seconds break, I'd let it play. I don't like the witty banter at the beginning. I guess most people do, because it seems like every podcast has it, but I just fast forward to the actual topic. Sometimes I have to fast forward 20 minutes to get to it. Trash taste. They are slowly turning into an influencer podcast. I miss the times when they were much more chill or relatable. Now, it's mostly them complaining about being entitled. I do hope they turn around though. Movie podcasts just remind me of the old SNL skit with Farley interviewing celebs asking do you remember that? That was awesome. They don't analyze, they just go through the plot and talk about how a part was cool. I have no fucking idea why Serial made this story into a podcast. Why am I listening to this and is there a point to this story? Kept coming into my head the whole 3 episodes. Podcast name is We Were Three. One guy lived in Philly for a short period of time but has lived in NYC for much longer, but Philly is his entire identity and it's annoying. I unsubbed from the Patreon because the free hour with ads is enough. Imagine a podcast where the funniest person you've ever heard does a show with the stupidest person who ever lived. That's what's annoying me, that I have to put up with the dumb guy to hear the funny guy. I feel like I'm at Bonaire overhearing college students with a little bit of knowledge talking like they're experts on the subject, when in reality they're actually just annoying everyone around them. That the mainstream news won't cover the story and it's been 2 guys having to cover this crazy story that I'm way too invested into. One podcaster is getting sued by one party in the case. You are good. Wonderful podcast, but they only do a Patreon episode once a month, sometimes less frequently. I feel like I'm donating money rather than paying for something extra. Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard and Monica Padman. It's a super nitpicky thing, but Dax asks too many yes-no, close-ended questions and not enough open-ended questions. Hard, Radio podcast ads for their shit podcasts they are promoting of D-level celebrities talking to friends. Who the fuck cares? Oh my gosh! When they are on a topic they tend to turn the focus to someone stupid or funny. I mean, some may enjoy but not me. Anybody else notice Joe Rogan started doing this really weird hybrid moan laugh whenever a guest says something controversial? That it isn't long enough. I need my hardcore history episodes be Dan Carlin just locked in a room where he talks non-stop, going on hiatus for 6 months. Several have done this. Oh, you're rich, you can afford to take 6 months off. Must be nice. They're increasing the amount of ads we notice, and no, I don't like your content enough to pay for a subscription. Radiolab turned from a very thought-provoking podcast to something with endless reruns. Vox became more political. Smith and Sniff when Porter goes on about Top Gear. Look, you haven't worked for the BBC in 9 years. Their co-host got fired, so they brought in a guy who is nearly as funny or interesting. A vague answer, but some people really don't have voices that are pleasant to listen to. Dave Chang when Chris Yang takes a day off. God, he just blathers on and on and on. A guy who works for The Ringer pronounces figure and it drives my nuts. That the real host died years ago. Art Bell, the OG, broadcasting from heaven. I tried to get into Smartless, but damn, I can't stand Jason Bateman. Gambling ads in sports podcasts. Keep gambling out of sports. Spend too much time talking about upcoming shows events. SGU. Ads on Spotify Premium. And they are louder than the podcasts. Joe Rogan talking about shitty supplements in every advert. Them trying to change format to find more slots for ads. There hasn't been a new episode since late November.